Me too. Two separate ones right there.
Thank you.
There's also on the agenda, there's two.
Crap, I forgot my water.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Poquoson City School Board meeting of January 18, 2022. We will start with a pledge to the flag and inspirational reading by Madeline Haddock.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. So tonight, instead of choosing an inspirational reading, I chose a quote in honor of celebrating Martin Luther King Day yesterday. I chose a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that represents a goal of our Poquoson school system. The function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maddie. We will now have a student video presentation. Okay, all right.
Can we have Megan Jones and Miss Kaysen to the podium?
My name is Megan Jones, and I am in second grade at Poquoson Primary School. Miss Kaysen is our principal, and she is always smiling when I see her around my school. She waves to the buses and cars when we get to school and is always there to help my teacher in the classroom if she ever needs it. I think being a principal would be a very hard job, but Miss Kaysen is really great at it. We love having her as our new principal.
Thank you, Megan. That was very good. Mr. Tillett, do we have any additions or modifications to the agenda?
We have 3 more students for the presentation.
Oh, wonderful.
Can we have Bradigan Corbett and Dr. Wood to the podium?
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bradigan Corbett. I'm a 4th grader at Poquoson Elementary School. Dr. Wood is our principal, and I wanted y'all to know she works hard to make our school great. She's always helping teachers and students. She even helped my Cub Scout pack break another world record last month. Dr. Wood has done a great job making us feel safe and taken care of at school, and we are glad to have her around. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, young Mr. Corbett. And who we have next?
We have Caroline Harper, and this is for Miss Bunting. I don't believe she's in tonight. Hopefully she's watching.
Hello, my name is Caroline Harper, and I'm an 8th grader at Poquoson Middle School. My school principal, Miss Bunting, is caring, involved, and always wants to make our school experience better each and every day. We all know that we can always go to her she will be willing to listen and help. Some of the changes that were made with this year, like COVID rules and our school being renovated, were hard to become familiar with at first. But thanks to people like Miss Bunting, we feel at home at Poquoson Middle School, just like we would the same without Miss Bunting. We are very lucky to have her as our principal. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we have Ava, Michael, and Mr. Robert.
Hi, my name is Ava Michelle, and I'm currently a senior at Poquoson High School. This is Mr. Roberts' first year as principal for Poquoson, where he has made impeccable connections with the student body by attending school events, greeting us in the hallways, and remaining attentive to student needs. He is dedicated, considerate, hardworking, and genuine. Mr. Roberts gives his all to the school, and I couldn't imagine a better leader for PHS.
Oh, thank you so much, Ava.
That concludes those speakers. That was in reference to Virginia celebrated last week.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Mr. Tillett, do we have any additions or modifications to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
All right, then I guess we'll go right on to recognitions, and after our recognitions, we will break to meet with you. We'll start with Poquoson High School Senior of the Month.
RFL, can you come to the podium?
I have a certificate of recognition for you to Mara Fell, Senior of the Month. Would you like to come forward? Is there information on Mara's contribution? There's a reading. It is in here? All right. We have a meeting that ran rather late. Dusty, do you happen to have a copy of it?
I don't have an extra. There should be 2 folders up there.
Okay. Actually, 4.
This one, it's in the reading file.
Blue one, okay. There we go. That helps a great deal. Thank you, dear, for your patience. All right, our January student of the month is a young lady pursuing a career field in physical therapy and nursing. Her teachers and peers describe her as a leader, an active listener, dependable, motivated, and responsible. Beyond taking some of Poquoson High's most rigorous courses, this student has been a member of the Key Club and the Spanish Club and was introduced to the National Honor Society and Tri-M Honor Society. She is an athlete competing in cheerleading, junior varsity basketball, and varsity winter track. Finally, this student has a passion for the arts and has participated in show choir all 4 years while in high school, serving as the dance captain from 2019 to 2021. Please join me in congratulating our January Student of the Month, Mara Fair. Had all kinds of things. All right, if we can break to meet and greet with you for a couple moments, that would be super. All right, welcome back. We are now ready to begin presentations and reports. And our first report will be Thomas Nelson from Thomas Nelson Community College, Dr. Tawana Porter Brown, President. Thank you.
Good evening. All righty, it's always hard to follow the little ones, but I will give that a try. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the board, thank you for having me here this evening. And on behalf of all of us at Thomas Nelson, we want to thank you, and my team wanted me to share with you that they enjoy working with your principals and your guidance counselors, and someone who I think is one of the most passionate superintendents I have met, and as competitive about student success as I am. So we bring you greetings from the college. I wanted to share with you tonight just some Poquoson specific data from the college, and I hope to leave some time for you to ask any questions, should there be any to ask. I did want to share, we look at data all the time at the college, and we think it's important for the localities that support us to sort of know where some of their investment is going. So I wanted to share with you just some recent data about the success of the Poquoson residents who attend Thomas Nelson Community College, and also about the students who are in our dual enrollment program. And so really, and you can read line to line, I'll try to be brief, but in the last school year, there were about 174 residents from Poquoson who were enrolled, and that does not include our dually enrolled students. I'll talk about them in a few moments. And so we like to talk about application rates. So how many of the students who apply for enrollment actually make it in to sit for classes on their first day of school? And the Poquoson rate is 46%, which is much higher than all the other areas in our locality. And so that's pretty impressive. And the national rate is much lower than 33%. So we think that's pretty impressive when it comes to our Poquoson residents. Our retention rate for Poquoson students is 50%, which also is much higher than our national rate and a little lower than our overall college rate, which is 52% retention. But I also think that that's because a lot of the residents of Poquoson also transfer on to four-year institutions earlier. So that's definitely not a loss for Thomas Nelson, but definitely not for the city of Poquoson. The average GPA of our Poquoson non-high school students is a 2.9 GPA, which is higher than our college average, which is 2.7. And Poquoson students collect an average of 31 credits, which is really close to our college average of 32%. When it comes to graduation, this is just last year, there were 19 Poquoson residents who graduated, and those residents, those 19 received 21 total awards. So that means there's a few students who receive both a certificate, an associate's degree, or 2 associate degrees at the same time. So we're always impressed when that happens. 23% of those students graduated within 3 years, and the average graduation rate, as you probably know, for community colleges and any college is much more than the 2 and 4 years, and that's also much higher than the national rate. It's a little lower than the overall college rate, which is 29%, but also there's a number of students that we have that transfer before they finish their associate's degree, so we don't get to capture that success. Looking at where your students transfer to, again, looking at last year, 19 of the Poquoson student graduates transferred on and are currently enrolled in a 4-year college or institution. And so that's fantastic. The other 10 students finished their education with Thomas Nelson and are not enrolled anywhere. But when we look at students, when we look at longevity data, usually students who finish an associate's degree will come back or they end up transferring to a 4-year institution. So if you ask me in 5 more years, that data may change. I did want to share that the students who do transfer, the majority of them go on to Old Dominion, Christopher New Point, and the majority of them are studying business. I love to share, I'm a huge fan of the little ones. I work in higher ed, but I always love the little ones. And so we are huge proponents of our dual enroll program. And what I wanted to share, what you're looking at, this is last year's enrollment. And so at the end of this year, I could share with you a more updated version. But this is just an idea of what the dual enrollment student population looks like at Thomas Nelson. And so while 9%, the green area, 9% represents Poquoson, it might be the smallest number on the screen, but it's also a very good reflection of the population, right? And so when we look at the populations, 9% is pretty much on par with the size of the city. what I believe is really impressive about your dual enrolled students in Poquoson, when we look at the 5-year average, how many more students we have in dual enrollment programs now than we did a few years ago, that's a significant amount of growth. That is one of the largest amounts of growth compared to all of our localities. So that's pretty impressive, and we believe that has a lot to do with parents understanding the value of getting college exposure and accumulating college credits before heading to high school. So we're really impressed with the growth of Poquoson students in dual enrolled programs. And just to show you a side-by-side comparison of the same graph, if you look at this year, which is to your right, Poquoson is one of the few localities where we see growth in dual enrollment. And so there's, other than Hampton, Poquoson is the only other locality where you see growth, which is impressive because the other areas they haven't remained flat. There's been a bit of a decrease. So that just is as an example of some of the relationships that we have with your guidance counselors and the conversations that they're having, right, with parents and with students about the value of getting college credit prior to completing high school. So we're really impressed with the growth of our dual enrollment program rates at Poquoson, or in Poquoson. The average GPA of your dual enrolled students is a 3.4. That's incredible. So if you remember the previous slide, our average student's GPA is a 2.7. And so for high school students, to have a 3.4 GPA while enrolled in high school and college at the same time, that's significant. That's about what I had as my GPA, and I definitely was not a 16, 17, or 18-year-old, but that's an incredible accomplishment. And they accumulate, that's about 3 classes at the college, 7 credits. It's really hard to get 1 credit at a college, but they accumulate about 7 credits, which accounts for 3 classes. So very impressive. I was highly impressed with the GPA of our students. The last piece of information I wanted to share just about the dual enrollment student outcomes is where they are now. Your dual enrolled students, as you can see, 64% of them actually end up transferring to a 4-year institution, which is a much higher rate than the transfer rates of our traditional residents. And so I think that is, it's a big nod to how effective high school exposure to colleges and preparing students for that next step. And so 64% of your dual enrolled students going off to a 4-year institution, and that's the 64% that's enrolled right now. So they graduated, they were seniors in May, and right now they're at a 4-year institution and enrolled currently. I think that's great. 20% of your high school graduates are here at Thomas Nelson continuing their education, and 16%, which is 15 students, are not enrolled anywhere. And so I want you to know what we do is if you started at Thomas Nelson and you did not complete a credential and you were one of our dual enrolled students, what we do is we have a scholarship called Finish What You Started, and we reach out to those students and we encourage them to return at no cost to the student or their family and finish the education that they started. And so we're able to do that not just because of our altruism, but also because the city of Poquoson helps fund that scholarship. And so we want to make sure that those students have the ability to finish what they started and get their education, because we see what happens when they finish their college education. Last but not least, I did want to share about some of the scholarships that we have available. 15 of the 65 scholarships and grant awards at Thomas Nelson that are specifically earmarked for high school students or folks who live in a certain area are earmarked for Poquoson residents, and that's whether you are a dual enrolled student or not. Over the last few years, we've been able to give out 22 scholarships to the amount of about $24,000. 2 of those scholarships were the dual enrollment Finish What You Started scholarship, and those students are still finishing what they started. One of the data points that I think is interesting to share is we have a large allotment to support students who are in financial need. And so if students have emergencies and things of that nature, it could be my car broke down or my computer no longer works or I need a Wi-Fi hotspot, we have a way to respond to student needs. And in the last 5 years, we haven't had to allot any of our funding to Poquoson students or Poquoson residents. And so one of the things that tells us, and that's not a terrible thing, but what that tells us is that there are probably a lot, I don't think that Poquoson residents don't have challenges financially, but I do believe that there's probably other resources that they have available to them, making the college probably a last resort when seeking help. And so that's actually, I think that's a great nod to the resources that are most likely available for Poquoson residents and those students in the community, because we haven't had to give out an emergency aid grant in the last 5 years. So I thought you'd want to know that there's clearly an indication that there's resources available for the residents and those students in this community. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope that wasn't too fast. You have a lofty agenda, so I wanted to be mindful of your time, but I'm happy to answer, Madam Chair, any questions if there are any.
So much, Dr. Brannon. That was excellent. I'm excited.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will leave the presentation. If there's any questions now or later, I'm happy to answer.
Actually, I would like to say I've been on the board for several years, and I know that we've had the dual enrollment, but it's great to actually have you come in and present and show us the outcomes, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Brandon, my father was on the board for Thomas Nelson for many years, Dr. Dever, and it's really what introduced me to some of the opportunities that Thomas Nelson presents. And one of the best things that you guys have going, which I think, with local kids specifically, is that 2-for-2 program, going to Thomas Nelson for 2 years. Because we all know the debilitating expense that some of the major colleges and universities are taking their toll. And it's a phenomenal program and a wonderful opportunity. And I know I'm a big advocate with pushing young students and parents to look into the opportunities that Thomas Nelson has right in our backyard. So thank you for your great work.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned our board. I know this man needs no introduction, but I have to acknowledge my board member who represents Poquoson, Mr. Alan Melton, for being here and being a constant support of me and the college.
Thank you.
All right, have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tillett will provide our superintendent update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Check, testing, we on? All right. Well, hello, welcome everybody. Dr. Porter Brandon, I want to thank you again for being here tonight. We had a meeting, I think she'd only been in town a week or so, and we had a conference call, and we share not only history in the same state, a little south of here, but also a passion for the opportunity for kids, especially in dual enrollment, to get their start while in high school. And we're committed to grow that program. I have a kind of a lofty goal to see large numbers of our kids engaging in dual enrollment and saving their families a lot of money. And we were able to accomplish that with great success where I came from. And with Dr. Porter Brandon's help, we're gonna make it happen here too. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to do what you all are used to, another quick rundown of COVID numbers around the nation, the state, and locally, just so all of our decisions that we make tonight are informed. As you see, the COVID spike that we were hopeful to avoid after the holidays, in the gray area there, we have not avoided, nor has any community that I'm aware of. So if you start looking at national data, of course, COVID has spiked all over the country. I won't bore you with all the numbers, but you'll see here in the COVID cases are chewing on 800,000. This, of course, we drill down to Virginia. This is a color-coded map, and we look for red as a bad thing, and we're trying to get to yellow and blue. And we were making some progress prior to the holidays, and that has all changed, and everything is in red, which is high levels of COVID transmission. If you look specifically at a little bit of good news, as we track symptomatic cases and the onset of symptoms, a little over a week ago, that number had spiked, and then we've dropped a bit. So we're going to find a few hopeful pieces of data in this presentation as we move forward that I think are going to help us all see a little bit of light at the end of this short tunnel we're in. The cases specifically in Poquoson, you'll see our 7-day running average. And if you just follow that line, you'll see those numbers have been relatively low from May on, and then we see this Omicron spike. The PCR rate or positivity rate is 36.9 as of the 12th. That number's hanging around that same place over the last several days. We, of course, have been tracking COVID cases specifically from the onset of the pandemic. And we have tracked those through last year. And we ended last school year at 64 cases. And then right before the holidays, we published this at our board meeting, and we were at 114 cases. And we're at 344 now. So that number is climbing. But the very good news from that, which is not good news, is over the last 3 or 4 days, we've started to see it level off a bit. And I've heard some feedback, and we have some nurses here from the hospital, that seems to be a little bit of a trend in the last few days. Am I right about that? A little bit of leveling off from the local hospitals. So that's, those are all little pieces of good news in this history. Just recently, they changed the definition of an outbreak in an organization or an institution, and it used to be 2 cases that have a direct correlation in that organization, like a classroom, for example. If 2 cases stem from a classroom, that's an outbreak by VDH guidance, and they changed that to 3 with the onset of Omicron, and we have gone from 5 cases to 14 cases since our last board meeting of actual outbreak. We're also tracking quarantines, and we're going to be talking a lot about quarantining tonight. And our quarantine rates, if you'll see from our last report during that period of time, and then this report during this period of time, it corresponds with that after the holiday spike, and you can see that we have quarantined large numbers of individuals, and these are students and staff in our schools. And these are numbers of kids learning virtually, in many cases because of quarantining or because of illness or COVID positive cases. So as of our presentation at the last board meeting in December versus today, and you'll see those numbers have, of course, risen. Vaccination rates around the state, are the age group we've most focused on from 5 to 17, 43.9. In Poquoson, we're a little under that, but that number is growing. So we are always encouraging folks to consider vaccinations as a mitigation and protection. So, update on CDC guidance. As you know, CDC has changed their guidance on the 27th of December. We all started to see a shift in guidance, especially as it relates to isolation and quarantine. And the simple shift is from a 10-day quarantine or isolation period to 5 days plus 5 additional days of masking when in public. So that's the guidance. Our board, in an effort, again, our goal, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning because it's been our goal since the beginning, to keep all kids and all of our staff in school every day. That's what we talk about every day, all day long. That's our goal. So we're going to do whatever that takes to make that happen. And so when we saw this shift in the CDC guidance, we immediately jumped on it. I made a call to all the board members, hey, can we go ahead and move here so we can get some kids and teachers back in school more quickly, and we have been doing that. This is, I won't get in the weeds here with you with the details of this, but there are levels of guidance for quarantining and masking, isolation based on your vaccination status, based on whether you've had COVID in the last 90 days. These pieces of data or guidance are on our website. We sent that out to all of our families immediately after we made this shift. And so our goal is to continue to promote that. And as we make some decisions tonight, giving more responsibility, I believe, to families as they navigate through this, these reminders and talking points are going to be even more important. We are seeing that the Omicron variant has started to peak in northern cities. I wanted to add this slide tonight because I've been tracking this and following this closely. I was reading that New York City was publishing data of about 40,000 positive cases a day on a trend, and that's dropped to 28,000 over the last six-day trend, which is really good news because if you've been following this as closely as I have, you've seen that thing, the Omicron variant kind of shifted up north, and it went crazy up there for a while, and then they seem to have reached, they're not calling it a peak yet, but I think that from the numbers I'm watching, we may have started to see the peak up north, and that will be following here soon thereafter. So I'm very hopeful that we might be seeing a peak in this thing. But we'll, of course, continue to monitor it closely. Just a reminder, this is a slide we've been presenting month after month. We send it out. It's on our website. We remind our staff and our families of this constantly. The best way to attack this thing is layered mitigation. We are constantly layering on protection, and these are just some of the things that we do along the way. We have health screenings that go by text every morning to every individual. Our students and our staff get a message every morning. Do you have a fever? You know, have you been exposed to COVID? Stay home if you're sick or contagious. And we do temperature screenings as individuals walk in our buildings every day. All of our employees and students right now are required to wear masks. Our board's going to be talking about that in a few minutes. All employees and students, our classrooms and spaces are designated so that there's the 3 feet of social distancing in every space. We encourage as much distancing as possible. I know they've done some extraordinary things in our schools as it relates to cafeterias and areas for people to eat. And so a lot of that physical distancing we've worked very hard to accomplish. Something I'm very proud of, we were able to use some significant federal funding, COVID funding, to be able to retrofit all of our classrooms with a pretty high-tech air purification system. And all of our buildings are run through MERV 13 filters. So we're cleaning the air as best we can. And in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about the new governor's order. And if you read that order in detail, there's also some promotion of this kind of work as well, encouraging school divisions and organizations to focus as well on their air quality, not just the other mitigation strategies. So I feel good about where we are in Poquoson as it relates to air quality. We also are engaged in VISTA, which is a diagnostic testing program. So we're able to provide to our students and staff immediate tests. So if you feel like you have some symptoms, you can walk down to the nurse and get a COVID test, and in 15 minutes know if you have COVID. And all of this, again, to point back to our goal, is an attempt to do everything we can to keep kids and teachers in school, kids and staff in school. So if we can find out if you're sick with COVID or not, immediately, we can keep you there. The goal is to keep you in school. So the testing program we feel good about. There is, anybody's tried to get a COVID test lately, there is limited supply. That seems to be changing as we speak. So we keep searching everywhere to make sure we can keep up the supply of our COVID tests so we can make that available to our families as needed. So I'm going to walk you through real quickly the legal guidance associated with COVID mitigation strategies. I won't bore you with this because I know you all have been very following this intently, but last March the Senate passed a law called Senate Bill 1303, and basically the purpose of this law was to ensure that all 133 school divisions offer in-person learning for 180 days or 990 hours minimum in this academic year. That was the purpose of the law. It was passed, signed by the governor. There was one line in that law that says each school board provide in-person instruction and adhere to the maximum extent practicable, that's important language in this law, to any current applicable mitigation strategies provided by the CDC. Then, following that, the health commissioner ordered in August the 12th, required that all individuals in all public schools in the state of Virginia wear a mask when indoors. That's actually public and private schools in Virginia. So we've been complying with that order since August the 12th. That's been the governing factor of our decision as it relates to that level of mitigation of mask wearing. On Saturday, a new governor was, as you know, inaugurated in the state of Virginia. And later that afternoon, we got information with, I think, 8 or 9 executive orders that were issued that day by the new governor. One of those orders pertains directly to public schools, so we were watching that very closely. And so our board since then has been studying that order, every word of it and the details and its intention, and spent a lot of time, and we've had lots of individual conversations back and forth about what the impacts of this law. And the two things that it does, first, it withdraws all other previous orders. So it makes null and void Governor Northam's Executive Order 79, which has several pieces of guidance for public schools and other organizations, as well the order of the Health Commissioner of August 12th. The second thing it does is it gives parents exclusively the right to determine whether their children wear masks in school. It's pretty specific and it's clear. So again, our board will be taking that up as an item for consideration tonight. The other thing that our board's going to be considering tonight, and I wanted to just share the background on this, is we have been monitoring for some time our work in contact tracing. Now I'll give you the quick and dirty for that, and this is more for the public than our board. Our board has been chewing on this for quite some time. Contact tracing is really the work of the health department. Health departments in the state of Virginia and around the country actually have been charged during this pandemic as a layer of mitigation to be tracing people who may have come in contact with COVID-19. What we found early on is if that was a mitigation strategy that was to help keep kids in school, we needed to help them with it because they're grossly understaffed, to be quite honest with you. So what we found early on in the pandemic is that somebody might have come in contact with COVID in our schools, and we knew that because we were reported that someone was positive for COVID, and the health department couldn't get to contacting those people for days, maybe even weeks. So it was useless information a week later, 2 weeks later, that you may have come in contact with somebody who has COVID. So we then rallied our troops, and I tell you, this has fallen on the shoulders of many of our administrators in the room tonight who have been on the phone at inopportune times on Sunday night, late at night, calling parents to say, we just found out that a student in your child's class has COVID and your child may have been in close contact with that person. We've been doing that for months. But what we found was there was little to no correlation between those calls and quarantining large numbers of people and positive COVID tests. So as we tracked that, we couldn't find that there was a direct correlation in sending large numbers of kids home saying you may have come in contact with someone with COVID, and then that turning out to be a positive COVID test from that contact. Does that make sense? So our board's been looking at that for some time. As well, VDH has continued that challenge of being able to get to families and let them know that a family member has been in close contact. So they've been unable to really fulfill this obligation of contact tracing as well. So our board will be discussing tonight and having an item for consideration about possibly suspending our work in supporting VDH's work in contact tracing. And so that was kind of the backdrop to that discussion. We will continue, as we have from the beginning, to recommend following CDC and VDH guidance. We're not the experts. I've said to too many people over the last 2 years. I can talk all day long about teaching and learning. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know about how to stop the spread of infectious disease. I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, as we all have, living with this, but this is not my expertise. And so we intend to follow and recommend the guidance from the CDC and VDH. We will continue to track. So our dashboard will be updated every day. We'll tell you what we know about COVID in a transparent way happening in our schools. But the board is going to consider several pieces of that layered mitigation of whether that's generating the outcome that we expect based on the effort that's being put in. We are stressing that people stay home when they're sick. This is a very simple request. We've been doing it my whole life. We've had flu season as long as I can remember. And we stress that when people have any symptoms that could be contagious, stay home. Now that's even more important with the pandemic, is please stay home if you're sick. And we can't say that enough. We'd be happy to give you a test if you think it's COVID, and we can tell you pretty quickly if you're positive. Here's the formula. Of course, the new guidance goes from 10 to 5, plus 5 of masking. So we're going to continue to recommend that. On January 7th, we conducted a vaccination clinic. We've had several of those throughout the last couple of years. And it was a big success. We had 150 individuals receive a vaccination, first, second, or booster. And the next clinic is February the 4th. So anyone's considering vaccinations, we're running those, and health and local pharmacies and doctors' offices seem to have an ample supply. A lot of information, short period of time. Questions from the board? Okay, now thank you.
Thank you so much, Artie. Our next report will be a financial update. Thank you, Dr. Ban. From Tara Woodruff. Thanks, Tara.
For this evening, I want to take a brief look at the governor's budget. FY23 will be the first year of the new biennium, and these are some of the factors that have to be considered for the upcoming budget process. So I'm going to go through each of these in the next few slides. Re-benchmarking begins the biennial budget development process at the state. The state and federal funding to school divisions for public education is provided through the Direct Aid for Public Education budget, and the General Assembly appropriates the funding. The Direct Aid is appropriated in 6 budgetary categories, which are Standards of Quality, or SOQ, Incentive Programs, Categorical Programs, Lottery Proceeds Fund Programs, Supplemental Education Programs, and Federal Funds. And input data is used in the Direct Aid formulas, and they're updated every 2 years to recognize changes in costs that have occurred over the preceding biennium. So in this governor's budget, there is funding for divisions that is going to be held harmless because of COVID. There was school closing, virtual settings, which meant unanticipated reductions in cost. So you will see the numbers when we get there, but it's about $500,000 that we are being held harmless. Otherwise, it would have been reduced. The local composite index, or LCI, which we've talked about, is a formula to determine the ability to pay for each locality based on multiple factors, which include true value of real property, adjusted gross income, and taxable retail sales. This chart shows the change over the LCI over the last 10 bienniums. For FY23 and 24, the LCI decreased to 0.3641, which means that we will get slightly more from the state, which is good news. There is a delay. So LCI is based on a few years ago. So if there's any upticks, we'll see it in a few years. Average daily membership, I know you have heard this many times. This is how we are funded, and it's based on the March 31 ADM. So you can see that we were experiencing an increase in enrollment prior to the pandemic in 2020, and then a decline. We are projected to go up slightly. The legacy project that you see next door is underway, but we don't anticipate any students from that until FY24. All right, compensation. The governor's budget included a 5% increase in both FY23 and 24, so that would provide a 10% increase over the biennium, but they provide funding for SOQ funded positions only. The General Assembly voted to increase minimum wage to $12 per hour by January of 2023. So we are going to need to look at our substitute rates and other positions such as cafeteria monitors and technology summer assistants to increase those to minimum wage. We are also currently reviewing the athletic and instructional supplements. In the area of benefits, the governor's budget did not include a change to the VRS rates. The VRS board did recommend a decrease by about 2%, but the governor did not incorporate this decrease into the budget. So that means the rates will remain unchanged for the next 2 years unless the General Assembly makes a change to that. Anthem Dental did provide a 2-year guarantee in FY22, so those rates will not change. We are estimating a health insurance increase of 11.9% at this point, which means that using the current employee premiums that we have, this would be about a $261,000 increase for us. So this is a look at the difference between the FY22 approved budget and the FY23 governor's proposed budget. There is an increase in the SOQ funding by just about over $500,000. There is also an increase in the incentive and categorical, which is where the compensation supplement is in this budget. I mentioned earlier about the hold harmless on re-benchmarking. That's about $518,000. There is also an elimination of the grocery tax planned in the state budget, and we are also being held harmless if that goes through, and we have about $62,000 included in that as well. There is one-time funding, so you see the school construction of $1.7 million. That is only one-time funding next year, and it is for non-recurring expenditures that can be used for school construction, additions, infrastructure, site acquisition, renovations, technology, even debt service payments on school projects, and it's school projects completed within the last 10 years. So there's some options there with that. Without that increase that you're seeing, since it's one time, if you back that out, we would have about a $1.1 million increase or an 8.4%, just so you kind of get that. Next steps, superintendent proposed budget will be based on the information available at the time. We won't know completely what the General Assembly decides until they're finished. It is a long session this year. So they actually won't finish until March, but we might start getting some information out of that. Upcoming meetings in February, the superintendent plans to present the proposed budget. At the regular meeting in March, there will be a public hearing on the proposed budget, as well as school board discussion, and budget approval can occur. If you didn't choose to approve it at that meeting, we would have to approve it by the end of March to get it over to the city. And then on April 25th, there is tentatively a joint school board and city council work session planned. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Woodruff. Dr. Hill will be our next speaker on the instructional update.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Tillett, and members of the school board. My presentation this evening is to review with you the timeline for our updating of the program of studies for the 22-23 school year. So as this year, as we have in years past, in approximately November, our faculty are asked to submit recommendations for the upcoming program of studies. We have a committee that met in December and January, and that committee consisted of our counseling directors for middle and high school, as well as our building principals, our director of support services, and then some school board office staff. We reviewed those recommendations, and of course, I'll be outlining those for you in just a moment, and then we will ask for our school board to vote on those proposed changes. So for high school, we have recommendations for a revised course description for chemistry, to remove a sentence from the course descriptions to students who have successfully completed biology and geometry with a minimum of C are recommended for chemistry. We have a revised prerequisite for our regular environmental science to change grade levels from 9 to 12 to 9 and 10. And then in special education, we have 2 title changes, and those are to align with VDOE language. We also have in our general recommendations for Virtual Virginia to change verbiage that specifically states students administratively withdrawn from Virtual Virginia courses due to not logging in regularly or being inactive or failing to complete coursework over a consecutive 8-day period would receive a grade of F on their transcript. And then we also want to change the add drop date from 5 days to 6 to 10 days to allow our students to have additional opportunity to make those decisions. And then we have 3 recommendations for additions in science to add a Biology 2 course that would focus on topics in biology, aquatic and terrestrial biology. In language, we'd like to add a sign language course, and then in fine arts, add a technical theater course. And then in middle school, we have just a couple of changes. One is changing a course title from digital solutions to computer solutions. Basically, it's the same course and description, but again, the change needs to align with VDOE language. And then in special education, again, 2 title changes to align with VDOE language. So in terms of next steps, once we have the board's approval, then the program of studies is posted online. And from there, our guidance counselors take over. They start working with our current students in grades 5 to 12, and they'll be discussing options with those students and working with them to make selections. And then, of course, information will be shared with our middle and high school parents. And then in approximately April, based on those activities, our middle and high school will start building their master schedules based on enrollment. And so we will have parent information meetings. There'll be presentations from the school counselors, and they'll discuss the registration process, schedule and course information, graduation requirements, etc. They always build in time for a Q&A. And then, of course, all sessions are recorded for our parents who may not be able to be in attendance. And then we always send informational emails and then post information on our web pages and social media to make sure that we are reaching as wide of an audience as possible. And then these are the parent information meetings, and we are offering those both in person and virtual for our parents that may not feel comfortable attending in a large group or for their convenience can attend remotely. And so those are currently tentatively scheduled for February. And that concludes the presentation regarding the program of studies. Are there any questions?
I have 2 questions, if I may.
Sure.
So on the environmental science, does that mean juniors and seniors can't take it?
No, it just means that we're trying to, guidance counselors have indicated that they're trying to guide students to science courses that align with their mathematics courses, but it's not intended to be gatekeeping.
And then on the biology 2 edition, you said aquatic and, is that based like oceanography and ecology?
It's more terrestrial and, let me go back and look to make sure I give you the right
There's
one.
aquatic and terrestrial, but you said, so is that similar to oceanography and ecology, or is it a different class altogether?
It's not exactly, and I can get you additional information.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had another quick question on those elective courses like the aquatic and terrestrial biology. Will those count towards something like the NCAA clearinghouse or a college? You know, you have to have 3 years of Spanish, or you have to take the Spanish at college. Do those count as your science sequence courses, or are they
Yes.
just pure?
They would count in the standard diploma. After talking with the guidance counselors, they're looking at moving to more, 9th graders would take environmental science. Then in the 10th grade, they would take biology. And in 11th grade, they would take biology 2, chemistry or astronomy. And then in grade 12, an elective. And then the advanced diploma sequence, we would be leaving that as is.
Last question really is the staffing consideration. Do we have somebody that can teach a sign language course without having an additional hire or anything like that?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. It always makes me wonder if it wouldn't be wonderful to be a high school student these days, to be able to take all these interesting courses.
Yes, they have some exciting options.
Our last report is Dr. Brandon Ratliff for our operations update.
Good evening, Mr. Tillett, Madam Chair Sheeler, and board members. Tonight I'm going to review food services, custodial services, and go over their updates on their construction to date. First, we'll begin with food services and custodial services. As you know, we contract services out, our food services and our custodial services in Poquoson. Our food services contracts out through Aramark, and our custodial services contracts out through SSC. We are, I guess, in the coming weeks, we're beginning the process of putting out new RFPs for each of these services. An RFP is basically a request for proposal. Any kind of services or purchases that you do over $50,000, an RFP is required that we do that to make sure that we have the right individuals doing it, and it's a competitive bid. So we're out to get the best price that we can and best thing for us. Typically, when you're looking at contract services, the RFPs will go out every 3 to 5 years. The food service RFP would have actually gone out last year, but there was a waiver given by DOE on doing that. Food services and custodial services have both experienced several challenges within this school year. Both programs have had real challenges with staffing, as we have as a school division and transportation and lots of different business and industry that are around us right now. One of the big reasons that we are seeing, both specifically in food services and the custodial services, is in compensation. The problem that we run into is comparable jobs to these that people can go and get. They actually can make more money very easily than where we are with that in means of compensation. That and lack of applicants. There are a lot of places, well, a lot of instances, I would tell you right now, both in food services and custodial services, we don't have applicants, and we have open positions available. So again, not so different as with the transportation or with the school division itself. Our food service program is experiencing some pretty bad problems with food chain supply. There are lots of different things such as meats that we are having problems getting, paper supplies. There are several different instances where the food service manager has actually had to go out to the wholesale clubs during the day in order just to get materials and supplies to function throughout the day. Custodians have really experienced differences in what they're cleaning. Their cleaning routines are different in what is going on right now. For example, they nightly, at this point, they wipe down desks and all door handles and such in classrooms. And years ago, that may not have been something that has been done. Along with looking at different ways they clean, right now the schools are sprayed nightly with the electrostatic sprayers. So everything is disinfected nightly, so the kids come into a fresh environment of the mornings. Next week, from January 25th through 27th, our food service program will be going through the FPAR process. Basically, what the FPAR is the Federal Program Administrative Review. Essentially, they are coming in and they're going to audit all of our school nutrition programs. Historically, the reviews have taken place. Well, it's rotated. It used to be every 5 years. This current cycle has been every 3 years. After this year, it's changing back to 5 years. Essentially, what they do is they come in and they do a paperwork review of not only our financial records, but essentially all things that measure any kind of accountability regarding food service. The auditor then goes in and actually audits the breakfast and lunch serving at the school. So they'll actually be there keeping tally marks, making sure that we're following all the federal guidelines when we're serving the kids, in what we serve them, all the way through what we serve them to the checkout process. And they'll end with any commendations or recommendations that they may have for us. Now, prior to getting into the construction update, I did want to take a minute to mention that as we have been progressing along with the solar project, we have run into a bit of a roadblock. We got word this past week from Sun Tribe that they were going to have some increased costs associated with the project. To date, we've not really gotten in-depth information, just very cursory information from them. And whatever is going on with them, the costs, we're not the only ones they're affecting. Many of the people that they're working with are feeling that effect. So essentially, as we get more information, if we have to change the process, we'll keep you informed once we really have a better handle on what their changes mean to us in real time. Now on to construction. So both of the pictures represent the south wall of the auditoria from the courtyard. The whole area in the courtyard there is progressing very quickly, and I would imagine if you went today, you probably would see that entire wall now bricked and probably everything within that courtyard. This will probably be actually one of the first areas that they're finishing up as they do start to get things done. And if you recall last month, we talked about them prepping for window installation. This month, they're actually putting the windows in. So if you drive by the middle school now, it doesn't quite look as much like a vacant building, and it's starting to really come together pretty well. These pictures represent the roof installation that's over the new office area, the new library, and the guidance area, which will be the new main entryway to the school. We're really close to having the building completely dried in between the roof and the windows, and we actually hope to have permanent power hooked up to the building by the end of February. At that time, the hope is that we will be completely dried in, and then the work on the inside will progress much more quickly and easily, given the fact that they'll have heat and not have to worry so much about water coming in. And lastly, more pictures of the roof insulation. The pictures show the bottom steel structure along with the insulation and the rubberized coating that goes over top of that. So that concludes my update for the night. I can answer any questions if you have that.
How is the contractor stating the progress is going in terms of tracking towards our deadline? I mean, I know there's a lot of, there's some concerns from the outside with some of the given delays about the timeline for completion. I know it's a difficult question, but
we actually talk about that. We have several meetings monthly, formal meetings, and that is actually something that always is discussed. And right now, we are well ahead of the time frame that was slated for substantial completion. I don't know that that is any time frame that they would publicly say we're X amount ahead, but I can tell you that the time frame that we're talking about, we're well ahead of what is, I think January 23 was substantial completion. At this point, I think it's safe to say we'll be finished a good bit before that.
Very
Thank
good
you.
news, Dr. Ratliff.
Thank you.
Now we're going to start our public comment section. The school board welcomes public comment during regular meetings. School board members do not respond to public comment during a meeting. All comments should address a matter related to Poquoson Public School. And the school board will not hear public comment that involves an individual student-related matter, the disclosure of which would violate applicable confidentiality requirements. The school board expects that each speaker will be courteous, modeling to our students how one can respectfully disagree with others' views. Speakers will address their comments to the entire board, not to one individual board member, nor to the superintendent, a staff member, or the audience. Speakers are encouraged not to engage in personal attacks, and speakers will present their comments from the podium. The time allotted to any speaker shall be 3 minutes, except that a motion to extend the time shall be in order and a majority vote by the school board members present shall be necessary to carry the motion. So welcome, McKay, who is our first speaker.
Can we have Theodore Mbishani to the podium?
Good evening, members of the board, taxpayer, administrators, superintendent, fellow commoners like myself back here. My name is Theodore Mbasiani. I'm a Poquoson resident and taxpayer, as well as a moving from New York. As you know, our newly elected governor has made some executive orders which take effect on January 24th, this coming Monday, to which school issues such as the mask mandate, which will be heard from. As of yesterday, there was 1,971 reported cases of COVID over the 2-year to date since the onset of keeping records for this virus. Of those, many are double counts because of those who tested twice or more during times of their illness. That's 15% of the city population of Poquoson, including double or more counts. About 76% of those are over the age of 40. Therefore, it is less than 3% of the student population who've tested positive over the last 2 years. I implore you to adhere to this common sense order to let parents decide on their children's needs to wear or not wear a mask, as well as to self-quarantine with the continuation of Zoom instructions. You have been appointed to positions of trust and have been charged with making decisions for students, taxpayers, and faculty. Notice that I did not mention lawyers or unions. Poquoson once marched to its own drums and did not wait until surrounding areas made decisions to follow. Poquoson was not bullied by lawyers and outside influences to make unanimous decisions. It's okay to not agree altogether on an issue, but for you to put forward and show unity in decision-making, it's malarkey. You are here to represent the taxpayers and the students, okay? All issues are not equal, nor should your decisions be. I started by saying I'm going to move in, and that's because I left a totalitarian, extortionist school system. Don't cower to outside pressure or threats. Stand up for Poquoson residents. If teachers want to sue you for issues that are not in their specific contracts, let them sue you while they're out on suspended leave. I have much experience in labor law and contract negotiations. If you need some help, give me a call. I'll do it pro bono. Thank you for your time. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Impaziani. Ms. McKay?
Can we have Alicia DeRoos to the podium?
Compliment the school board and the district for having the selection of programs. I graduated, I think, 15 years ago. There were not many options. And of course, and that was pretty much it. And then in regards to the contact tracing, I would like to know, my daughter has been quarantined twice by the school district, and at neither time has she caught the options for instruction during that period are very lacking. I spent a lot of time, my husband and I, taking time out of our work schedules to actually instruct her during that time. Paraphrasing the latest updated CDC information, loosely woven cloth coverings offer the least protection. While some recommend them, there we go, even the CDC is finally saying that zebra print mask you bought at Walmart essentially does nothing. Thankfully, a new executive order, a new law, is in place, and we can make parent choice a reality. For months, myself and other parents have been told by several members of the board that until the executive order or the new law is lifted or changed, our hands are tied. Well, good news! Your hands aren't tied anymore. This board didn't fight the previous executive order, and it should not fight the new one. It's time to put your vote where your mouth is and uphold the parents' right to choose what is in the best interest of our children. Thanks.
Is our next speaker in the room?
Laura Burbidge.
Laura Burbidge, I live at 19 Ferguson Street. I first want to thank you for all the work that you do. I know it's very difficult the past couple of years and complicated and a lot of emotions going on. I want to tell you that I disagree with most of the people that you've heard from. I also want to tell you that I know I'm not alone. All right? There are people who are afraid to come and talk to you because of the behavior of the people that you are hearing. I am told this. I was told this tonight. Okay, so listen. I don't agree with optional masks. I understand there's an order. The courts are probably going to handle that. We'll find out what happens. My understanding is a lawsuit has already been filed. But listen to this. The case rate over the past 7 days in Poquoson in the schools has been 1.7 times higher than the community. In the primary school where my kid goes to school, it is 2.5 times higher than the case rate in the community. It is very clear that this is spreading at school. Okay. I've read the proposals that you've got in your packets today, and I got a couple of comments. Contact tracing and quarantine has got to continue. I know people have been talking about parents' rights and what they want for their kids. Well, parents have a right to know if their kids have been exposed. We have families, we have people in the town who your kids love, who are at high risk, and we need to know if they have been exposed so we know what to do. Maybe we won't go visit grandma that weekend. Maybe we won't go visit Uncle Bobby who's getting chemo. All right, this is important information and we deserve to know. And I know that it's hard, and I know that the Department of Health is not giving you any help. But if you know of a case where a child has been exposed, their parents need to know. My other thought is, I know quarantines are terrible, all right? My kid doesn't like quarantines. In fact, my kid has had a really hard time for the entire time of COVID. Okay, I don't take any of this thing lightly. All right, I can't curse in here, but I would as to what it's like. All right, it stinks. We all hate it. We all hate masks, we hate quarantines, we hate distancing, the whole kit and caboodle. All right, my kid has had a terrible time, and my kid needs to be in school as much as anybody else. We cannot homeschool any more than we can distance learn. We cannot do virtual Virginia. My kid has he may be watching tonight.
Miss Burbidge, your time is up. It's been 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mrs. Burbidge.
And we have Tricia Renone to the podium.
Hi, good evening. I'm here tonight just to thank you all for all of your service, and to our teachers, to our principals, to the staff, to our cafeteria, to all of the help that goes on in our schools. It's been, I know, a rough ride for a lot of people, but I just want to give my thanks to everyone as a parent. Also, I sent an email to each and every one of you about a practical math class. Tonight, I noticed that we had on up about the addition and changes to the program of studies. I've been speaking with Mr. Roberts personally about a student that, and several students, I think, that could really benefit from a practical math class. There are a lot of children that are struggling with pre-algebra, algebra classes. You have a lot of kids that are on track to go to Thomas Nelson and other colleges, four-year colleges, but there's a lot of students that may not be on that track. A lot of students that might want to choose a trade school. My question is, are we really serving those children that really are going on or are on that track? And I don't really see it. Particularly, it hits home with me, with a member of my family. Some things have been worked for him, and I want to thank Mr. Roberts for that. He's been amazing. But I really think we need to think about these students that need this practical math class, or maybe even a math lab. And I know that there's some teachers that would definitely be willing to say that that is also what needs to be done at the schools. The mask, I would like to say that our governor was elected for a reason. The parents are wanting a change, and now is the time, and he was elected for that reason. I'm fighting cancer myself. It's been a rough ride, but I know personally, myself, I have to protect myself. I know my immune system isn't well, but that's me. I don't expect healthy children or healthy adults to have to go to those measures to have to protect me. It's me. It's what I need to do for myself. I think that masks need to be eliminated, and I think it's time. I have two kids. I have one kid that wants to wear it because it's a shield. He doesn't really want to talk much at school. He's just that type of kid. So it's easy to mask up and avoid conversation, avoid raising his hand. I have another kid that's so sociable, and he just is really tired of wearing it. He wants to see his friends and their faces and socialize. It's definitely hindered our children in learning, that are trying to learn to read, that need facial expressions from their teachers to learn from them.
Mrs. Renone,
Thank
you. 3 minutes.
Thank you all so much.
All right. So, if you would read the consent agenda. We have no more speakers.
Tonight's consent agenda is as follows: approval of financial report, closed, authorization to change appropriate, accept and expend funds in accordance with attached request, approval of personnel action enclosed, and approval of minutes for the December regular meeting, and then we all received the adjusted minutes.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? All right. Ms. McKay, if you would take the roll.
Mr. Ingram,
Aye.
Mr. Goodale,
Aye.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Jordan,
Aye. Aye.
Vice Chair Helsel.
Aye.
Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Now we move on to other matters for consideration. Our first matter is consideration of approval of changes of student attendance policy 7-2.3 and student handbook and code of conduct attendance guidelines update. And Mr. Tillett will bring you the information you need.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As indicated in our work session we had a few weeks ago, we have looked at this policy in great detail, and the recommendation reflects two parts. One, updates that came from new general statutes that were passed at the end of last year to go into effect the second half of this year. And this updated policy meets those requirements. One, to allow students to engage in one civic event day, and allowances for work-based learning and service learning opportunities. As well, an interest from some feedback in the community and represented by several members of our board to allow students the opportunity to participate in non-school sponsored extracurricular activities. These policy updates reflect those interests, and our staff is recommending approval tonight.
May I have a motion to approve the consideration for approval of changes to student attendance policy?
Motion to approve. Oh.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. A motion to approve the changes to the student attendance policy. I'll move that we do that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All right. Ms. McKay?
Mr. Ingram?
Aye.
Mr. Goodale?
Aye.
Mr. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. Childress?
Aye.
Vice Chair Helsel?
Aye.
Chair Sheeler?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. The next consideration is the consideration of approval of implementation of the new CDC and Virginia Department of Health guidance for isolation and quarantine and suspension of COVID-19 contact tracing and quarantine oversight by the PCPS employees.
Madam Chair, I move that we strike the current motions, consideration of approval, implementation of new CDC VDH guidance for isolation and quarantine and suspension of COVID-19 contact tracing and quarantine oversight by PCPS, and consideration of approval of proposed plan regarding mass optional status in schools to substitute the following: to remove all elements of contact tracing within our schools starting January 19th, 12 a.m., to make mask optional for students without parents opting in or opting out starting January 24th, 12 a.m. Additionally, to make mask optional for teachers, faculty, and staff without having to opt in or opt out starting January 24th, 12 a.m. To make mask optional for all guests ages 2 and up that visit any Poquoson City public school property starting January 24th, 12 a.m. And also approval of implementation of new CDC VDH guidelines for isolation and quarantine of COVID-19.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. You've incorporated both B and C into your motion. I don't know if the board is comfortable with that. May I have a second on that?
Let me second that, and then we can talk about it. So I'll second that, and then we can talk about it.
All right, that's fine. Let's have a discussion then.
So as you just said, he just incorporated everything into one.
Mhm.
Do we need to tease it back out into separate, or do we just go with it as a whole thing?
Comfortable with that? We have two different motions here.
So-
We could divide it up and talk about it separately.
Read again what you said. It was take contract tracing away. It was mask optional, and it was allow anybody ages 2 and up to not have to wear a mask on Poquoson City School property. Is that right?
And staff.
And well, staff. Yeah, anybody. I said anybody. So that's staff is anybody.
He separated it.
Oh, he did separate it out. Gotcha. Okay. So.
The conversation I have is that I would say the guests would need to go undergo the temperature,
Absolutely.
screening guidelines that everybody else is subject to. You're introducing a new population into the school.
So everybody that enters one of our school buildings does a temperature scan. Is that correct? Yeah. That would still be in effect. Is that correct?
That's what I need.
And in the schools.
It varies.
Wouldn't you like picking your kid up? Would that count to pick your kid up? Because I think when you first
If you
walk
come in the
you don't
building,
want
we
to have
have it
someone.
currently set up now, and we can adjust this. I mean, this is our current practice is when individuals come into our buildings and pass through our main entrances, they do a scan temperature check. We can move those different places. We don't currently have them set up for extracurricular activities. For example, if you come to a ball game, we are not currently scanning people in. I don't believe, are we, Mr. Roberts? No, for ball games, we can do that. We can add that. It would be an adjustment to what our current mitigation is.
I don't think we want to do that.
I mean, if a guest is going to be there for a long time, but picking a kid up a short term or athletic events, we just don't have the capability to. On there that I'm okay with not doing testing guests coming in.
Do we need to amend, make an athletic events or whatever? How's that work? So, from what you just said, we don't want, so there's a wrestling match, and people come in, do they need to scan with the temperature? We don't want to do that, we're not doing that now, is that correct? So, we don't want to start, I mean, we don't want to do that, so, but your amendment made it sound like we had to.
No,
So how are we doing it?
No.
I'm thinking more, if we're gonna start allowing volunteers again, or parents to come eat lunch with their kids again. And so if masks are optional, I mean, they should go through the RUNVA thing or temperature screening, so, or, having the same thing. If they should be doing the same thing the kids are doing to be in the school that day. Picking your kid up, that's one thing, and you're not really interacting, but if you're gonna go spend any amount of time with somebody.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Ingram, can you separate the two, actually address what's in item B of other matters? of the
We need
consent?
to amend the motion.
I move that we amend the motion. Strike consideration of approval of implementation. Amend the motion, suspension of COVID-19 contact tracing and quarantine oversight by PCS employees.
All right, so is the amendment, all right. Are you motioning that we keep to the language of B, which is consideration of approval of implementation of new CDC VDH guidelines for isolation and quarantine and suspension of COVID-19 contact tracing and quarantine oversight by PCS? Is that your motion, or do you?
Right, but the contact tracing was going to end January 31st. So we were going to keep the VDH guideline, and then I was going to substitute the January 31st, January 19th at 12 a.m.
We're just changing the date.
Sounds good to me. Yep, that works.
Second.
On that. Any further discussion on that? So we are adding a timeline to the end of your.
I do want to add just, we discussed this a lot with the board, and just families know that this is, any symptomatic children, don't send your sick kids to school. And I know somebody spoke earlier about contact tracing. You need to know when your children are sick. We're a community. I know if I've had kids that are sick or exposed to COVID, I call and let other parents know that their children have spent the night with my children. So I think that's a big one to know, that if they're symptomatic, we're still gonna include them in our numbers. We're just we've said all along, we're gonna follow the guidelines of the VDH. They're inundated. It's something that we feel strongly that it's the right time to be stopping this.
And like Artie said, the numbers have not shown. We have sent a lot of quarantine home that have not caught it and missed school. So our goal is to keep kids in school and try to do it as safe as possible. So it is going to take a lot of public knowing your kid's sick and keeping them home. I mean, it's easier to keep your kid home when you're sick than to be told that you're going to keep your kid home for the next 10 days when you don't know, and then 10 days later, and then 5 days later, and then they're finally sick, and people are like, you know what, I'm just going to say, well, they've been home enough. We're trying to make it where we'll put it back into the parents' hands to make sure that your kid's sick, keep them home for right now, because we do not want this spread. We don't want to go back to virtual. We don't want to extend this out, but we do want to start making sure the kids are in school when they're able to be.
Are we comfortable with that, voting on that? Excellent.
Contact tracing will end at 12:01.
January
tomorrow.
19th at 12:01.
January 19, 12 a.m. Yeah.
Which is tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Ms. McKay, if you would poll the board.
Mr. Ingram,
Aye.
Mr. Goodale,
Aye.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Jordan,
Abstain.
Mr. Childress,
Aye.
Vice Chair Helsel.
Aye.
Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Motion passes 6, 1 abstain.
All right, our next then, consideration. Let me read this through and you can comment. The consideration of approval of proposed plan regarding mask optional status in schools.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend that motion and consideration of approval proposed plan regarding mask optional status in schools to make mask optional for students without parents opting in or opting out starting January 24th, 12 a.m. Additionally, to make mask optional for teachers, faculty, and staff without having to opt in or opt out starting January 24th, 12 a.m. Make mask optional for all guests ages 2 and up that visit any Poquoson City Public School property starting January 24th, 12 a.m.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second. Why 2? Why 2? Why not 18 months? I mean,
Yeah.
wait, do we want anybody under 2 to wear a mask?
Well, I mean, CDC says that 2 and up have to wear masks, so.
Gotcha.
Obviously,
you're
they're gonna
using
be with
CDC
parents.
language. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments on that? That's on the floor. Board then. Ms. McKay?
Mr. Ingram,
Aye.
Mr. Goodale,
Abstain.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Jordan,
Abstain.
Mr. Childress,
Aye.
Vice Chair Helsel,
Aye.
Chair Sheeler.
No.
Motion passes 4, 2 abstain, 1 no.
Our next consideration of approval is of the secondary program of studies for the 22-23 school year. Heard a bit of that, and we'll hear more of that exciting news. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. I don't hear any interest in discussing. Most interested in hearing about the program as they evolve. All right. Ms. McKay, if you would poll the board.
Mr. Ingram,
Aye.
Mr. Goodale,
Aye.
Mr. Freeman,
Aye.
Mr. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Childress,
Aye.
Vice Chair Helsel,
Aye.
Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Our next section is communications and other matters by the school board or the superintendent.
Not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Ms. Maddie will report on our schools.
Good evening. So first start with the Poquoson Primary School. So the Poquoson Primary students and staff have returned from break and jumped right back into learning. After winter break, we had all teachers review our school-wide expectations. Our staff continues to find ways to acknowledge classes and students who are meeting school-wide expectations and are handing out bucket filler badges as rewards. Academically, we have reached the mid-year timeframe for some of our literacy assessments. This month, we are giving the mid-year PALS and mid-year development spelling assessments. With the data from these assessments, we will determine any additional layers of support students may need in our tiered system of support for reading and literacy skills. We had a PTO Spirit Night at Anna's last Tuesday and want to thank all the staff and families who support. This week we are celebrating National No Name Calling Week. This week we are wearing crazy socks and hair because we are crazy about being kind, team jerseys and hats to show we are on the same team and putting a lid on name calling, and wearing mismatched clothing because we are all different and that's okay, and our Bulls spirit wear because in elementary school rang in the new year with happy and smiling faces when students returned to school. Third grade has been hard at work learning division. In science, the third grade will be working on a favorite project called My Backyard Habitat as they learn about the animals that use their backyard as a habitat. Fourth graders continue to work on fractions as they learn about equivalent fractions. In reading and writing, there's been a focus on functional text and writing and research essays. Fifth graders have been working on identifying the main idea of an article. They've also been learning about the states in the Southwest and Midwest. Students are hoping for snow and staff are working hard to keep their attention focused on learning. Thank you to the PTO for warm gloves that were decorated with the letter PES and given to each staff member. Thank you to our parents for your support as we continue through this school year. Poquoson Middle School. We are very proud of the PMS chorus students that performed at the tree lighting ceremony at City Hall in December under the direction of their teacher, Ms. Sherman. They did a great job entertaining the audience, and their rendition of Rock and Roll Snowman certainly helped everyone get into holiday spirit. Poquoson Middle School is gearing up to begin the registration process for the 2022-2023 school year. It is hard to believe that it is that time already. Our school counselors are planning registration lessons for students and informational presentations for parents that will all take place in February. Parent information nights will be held in person and virtually this year. See the Bulls Bulletin or visit the PMS website for more information. Our all-in character building program continues its school-wide focus on being respectful, acting responsibly, and building resilience. We would like to extend our congratulations to our current Golden Bull Students of the Month, Nathan Jennings, Kamora Smith, and Tegan Horning. Poquoson High School students remained active over break participating in athletics and club-related events. Our Chick-fil-A Leadership Academy teamed up with the NHS to donate gift bags to 23 children within the foster care system. The second vaccination clinic was held at PHS during our first week back, and over 100 people received COVID vaccines. Our band participated in an all-district auditions virtually and are currently waiting on results and will perform at the all-district event in February. Our chorus students are also preparing to participate in the upcoming all-district events in February as well. As always, please check out the latest edition of our weekly newsletter, The Island Times, to keep up with events occurring at Poquoson High.
Thank you, Maddie. Ingram.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Fell for being Senior of the Month. I would like to thank all the speakers that came out tonight and throughout this whole time, and all the emails that I've received. You know, our common practice is for the board chair to answer the email. I wasn't ignoring you or anything like that. We're just, you know, allowing our board chair to be the spokesperson for us. That's it. Thank you.
I want to thank all the speakers for coming out and expressing your thoughts and your views, and we take it all into consideration. And it's not, again, it's not the easiest task for us to do. There's, you know, August it was one side, election different side. So we appreciate the decorum and everybody's willingness to respect each other's opinions and decisions.
Again, I'd like to thank all the speakers for coming out tonight, and for everyone who emailed us. We do, as Jonathan said, we do read and get all the emails. We don't always respond, as that's the board chair's responsibility. I'd like to thank all our staff and teachers for all the hard work that they do and all the stuff they've gone through this year with changes and accommodations and lunch duty, just everything y'all done. Just thank you so much for that. And lastly, just want to talk real quick about young Mr. Corbett up there in the Boy Scout uniform. He said that they just set a world record for, I believe, sleeping bag stacking. And that, as an old Eagle Scout, that just makes my heart swell. So I'm glad to see we have a great scout program here, so thank you.
So happy New Year to our staff and our teachers, 2022, and wanted to echo a lot of the sentiment that each one of our primary, elementary, middle, and high school students spoke about. Our principals, they've been working tirelessly through the pandemic, after hours, nights, weekends, and it's a testament to them, and a lot of really nice, resounding things were said by each one of our students. So I hope that our winter sports seasons can get wrapped up, and thanks for all the COVID mitigation processes that are still being done. Telling someone just yesterday, I never used hand sanitizer up until the last 2 years, and now I feel like if I don't have it in my pocket. So there's a lot of measures that I know our staff and students are taking, and I want to appreciate everyone. Thanks.
So I would like to thank all the students who came up here. I know it's kind of nerve-wracking to be in front of people, and they rocked it. They did better than I would do, so that's even awesome. And thanking the principals is probably the easy job, because these principals do a great job, and their job might get a little bit harder now, and we do apologize for it. I would like to still go back to making sure that parents stay vigilant with their kids. If your kids have symptoms, keep them home. I know it's hard to keep a kid home, but we're trying to make it where we don't sit there and have to shut down or cause someone else to get sick. Just like the flu, just like anything else, if your kid has a fever, keep the kid home. We know there's not a lot of tests out there. I think you can order, someone said, 4 new tests that at least can get sent home, so you kind of have access at your own hands at home too. Artie's done a great job to make sure there's plenty of testing in the school too, that if you got any questions about it, you can call the nurse up there and they get you right in. I've had to do it for my kid once before, so it works pretty well. And so I'd like to say thank you to everybody. And the whole time we've always said we're going to follow the law. The first time the mask was out there, we had to follow the law. We followed the law, had the mask on, the mask off. You see how hard of a decision it was up here. But in the end, some of us abstained, some of us said no, but it's still following the law, and it's kind of the same logic we had to use the first time. So thank you.
Goodness. So, like everybody else said, thank you all for coming and talking to us. It means a lot. I'm going to for a second probably. COVID's really real. We know that. I lost my dad to it last week. It was a hard decision for all of us tonight, but we need to do what's right. Following the law, keep your kids home if they're sick, encourage them to hand wash. We are all in this together, and we really feel like medically, thank you for all the contact tracing you've done. I even got a phone call Saturday night a couple weeks ago, so just everybody in our school system has been amazing. Thank you.
Well, it's hard to follow up on all of that. I think most of the comments that I wanted to make were already made. I'm really proud of all of our principals, Ruth Marie Carson of Poquoson Primary School, Barbara Wood of the elementary school, Melissa Bunting, middle school, and Andrew Roberts in our high school. There's so much you folks do, and you've been marvelous. And I thoroughly enjoyed the student presenters who praised them. Thank you for Maddie for another inspirational quote. This one from Martin Luther King. Thank you so much. You always do such a good job with that. And I also wanted to thank our speakers for being courteous and for truly modeling how our students, to our students, how one can respectfully disagree with others' views. That's very important. It was very good. I appreciate everything, all the effort that it took to come up here and speak, and that's very important for us to hear, as well as all the letters that I have received, all the emails I've responded to. Thank you so much for letting us know how you feel. It's very important. And that's all I have. All right. Do we have any material for board review? No? All right. Then we are adjourned.
Thank you.